She was blind since birth. She had never seen a single face in her life. But the day a merchant looked her in the eyes and lied to the entire village, she saw something no one else could see, a crimson light wrapping around his body like fire. And that light was about to save an innocent man's life. Welcome to @African_mystery_stories. If you're new here, kindly like, subscribe, and comment. And stay with us through this story. The village of Ikena woke up slowly, the way it always did, with the sound of roosters arguing over rooftops and the smell of smoke rising from breakfast fires. Children spilled out of mud brick homes, laughing, chasing each other through narrow paths still wet with morning dew. Merchants dragged wooden carts toward the market square, arranging yams, folded cloth, and clay pots under the shade of thatched stalls. It was market day, and market day in Ikena always felt like a festival. In the middle of that noise and movement walked a girl who needed no eyes to find her way. Her name was Amara. She was 17 years old, and she had been blind since the day she was born. She moved through the crowded paths with a calm, steady rhythm, her carved wooden walking stick tapping gently against the earth ahead of her. She did not stumble. She did not hesitate. She turned corners exactly where they existed and stepped over stones she could not see but somehow always knew were there. Some villagers admired her. "Look at that girl," an old woman whispered to her daughter one morning. "She walks better than people with two good eyes." But others were less kind. "How useless," a boy sneered to his friends as Amara passed by. "A girl who cannot even see the sun. What good is she to anyone?" Amara heard every word. She always did. Her ears had grown sharp in the exact place where her eyes had failed her. But she did not let the words cut her the way they were meant to. She simply smiled, tilted her head slightly toward the voices, and kept walking, her stick tapping a steady rhythm like a quiet heartbeat against the dust. That morning, an elderly woman named Mama Zoe stood near the well, wringing her hands, tears gathering at the corners of her tired eyes. "My goat," she cried. "My goat has wandered off again. I cannot find her anywhere." Villagers walked past, too busy with their own morning chores to stop. But Amara paused. She turned her head toward the sound of Mama Zoe's voice. "Which direction did she usually wander, Mama?" Amara asked gently. "Toward the stream, child. But I have looked there already and found nothing." Amara closed her sightless eyes for a moment, as if listening to something far beyond what ordinary ears could hear. Then she smiled. "I hear her, Mama." Faint bleating, past the second baobab tree, near the thorny bushes. "Come, let me help you." Mama Zoe stared at her in disbelief, but desperation made her follow. 10 minutes later, they found the goat tangled in a bush exactly where Amara had said. Mama Zoe wept with relief and hugged the girl tightly. "You see more than anyone in this village, child," she whispered. "Even without your eyes." Amara only smiled and said nothing. She never explained how she knew things. Not fully. Not even to herself, at first. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft orange, Amara sat beside her grandmother, Nola, on a worn wooden bench outside their small home. "Grandmother," Amara said quietly, "something strange happened today. When Bobaton spoke to me at the market, about the price of his cloth, I felt something odd. A warmth. A strange reddish light, right where his voice was coming from. I have felt it before, but today it was stronger." Grandmother Nola grew very still. She turned toward her granddaughter, her old eyes suddenly sharp with concern. "Describe it to me again, child." "Exactly as you felt it." "It was like fire, grandmother. But gentle. Crimson. Wrapping around him like a cloak only I could sense. It happened right after he told me his cloth was made from the finest imported thread." "I don't think that was true." Grandmother Nola was silent for a long moment. Then she took Amara's hands into her own, her voice dropping into a whisper, heavy with both wonder and fear. Amara, listen to me carefully. What you are describing, it is not something ordinary. I believe the spirits gave you something rare, something most people will never understand. When someone lies to you, deliberately, knowingly, you sense it. You see it, in your own way, even without eyes. Amara's breath caught. You mean? I can tell when someone is lying. Yes, child. But you must be very careful with this gift. People fear what they cannot explain. If they discover you can see through their lies, some will call you blessed. Others will call you cursed. And some, Nola's voice tightened, will try to silence you before you become dangerous to their secrets. Amara nodded slowly, the weight of her grandmother's words settling deep into her chest. She did not yet know how soon those words would be tested. Not far from Amara's home, in a small workshop filled with half-finished baskets and the smell of fresh reeds, a young man named Kofi walked late into the evening by the light of a single oil lamp. His hands were rough from years of labor, his clothes patched but clean. He was an orphan, raised by distant relatives who had little patience and less kindness, and by the time he was old enough to walk, he had learned to rely only on himself. Kofi repaired baskets, carried heavy goods for merchants, and did any honest work he could find. He dreamed, quietly and persistently, of one day owning his own workshop, a real one, with proper tools, where he could build furniture people would be proud to own. But dreams were expensive, and Kofi was poor. And in Ikeno, poverty often came with a silent verdict already written against a person's character. That Kofi boy, one merchant muttered to another as they packed up their stalls, always lurking around everyone's goods. Mark my words, one day he will steal something, and none of us will be surprised. He works hard, at least, the other replied. Hard work doesn't erase hunger. A hungry man does desperate things. Kofi never heard these particular words, but he had heard enough others like them throughout his life to know exactly how the village saw him. He carried that weight quietly, working twice as hard to prove himself, though it never seemed to be enough. The next morning, market day exploded into chaos. Madam Esi, the wealthiest trader in Ikeno, known for her sharp business mind and her even sharper tongue, arrived at her regular store carrying a leather pouch heavy with gold coins, the profits of 3 successful trading trips. She placed the pouch beneath a folded cloth on her table and turned to greet a customer. When she turned back only minutes later, the pouch was gone. Thief! Madam Esi's scream tore through the market like a crack of thunder. Someone has stolen my gold. My entire pouch, gone. The market square fell into instant pandemonium. Merchants abandoned their stores. Children were pulled close by frightened mothers. Voices rose in a chaotic wave of questions, accusations, and fear. Who was near her store? I saw someone circling earlier. Search everyone. Search everyone now. And then, inevitably, the whispers turned toward Kofi. He was seen near Madam Esi's store not long ago, someone said. He has no money. Everyone knows he struggles. He's been talking about wanting his own workshop. Where would a poor boy like him suddenly get funds for that, if not by stealing? Within the hour, what had been mere gossip hardened into public conviction. A crowd began to gather outside Kofi's small workshop, their voices rising with anger that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with assumption. Bring him out, a man shouted. Thief! Thief, others echoed, the word spreading like wildfire through dry grass. Kofi stumbled out of his workshop, confusion and fear written plainly across his face. What is happening? What have I done? You know exactly what you've done. Madam Esi's voice cut through the crowd as she pushed forward, her eyes blazing with fury and grief. My gold. Where is my gold, boy? I have not touched your gold, Madam Esi. I swear on everything I have, I did not go near your store today. Liar, someone shouted from the back of the crowd. "He's always lurking around," another voice added. Kofi's chest tightened with panic as he looked from face to face, searching desperately for even one person who believed him. He found none. Fear, once ignited by suspicion, spreads faster than truth ever can. News of the chaos reached Chief Kwesi, the respected elder who had led Ikeno for over 2 decades with patience and fairness. He arrived at the square with slow, deliberate steps, his walking staff striking the ground with quiet authority. The crowd parted for him instinctively. Enough. His voice, though not loud, carried the kind of weight that silenced even the angriest whispers. This is not how justice is decided. Not with shouting. Not with fist. Not with assumption. He raised a hand toward the great baobab tree at the center of the square. Everyone, beneath the tree. Now. We will hear this properly, or we will not hear it at all. Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd gathered beneath the ancient branches of the baobab, its wide trunk having witnessed generations of village disputes settled in its shade. Kofi stood trembling at the center, flanked by 2 village elders, while Madam Esi paced nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Who among you actually witnessed the theft with your own eyes?" Chief Kwesi asked, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. Silence. Anyone at all? More silence, heavier this time, as people realized, almost for the first time, that their fury had been built entirely on suspicion rather than fact. Then a voice rose from the crowd, smooth and confident. "I saw it, Chief." All eyes turned toward Jabari, a well-dressed merchant known for his charm and his silver tongue. He stepped forward with practiced ease, his expression carefully arranged into one of grave reluctance. "I did not want to speak," Jabari said, "but if justice demands it, I will not stay silent. I saw Kofi near Madam Esi's stall this morning. I saw him glance around nervously, and then I saw him slip something beneath his cloak before hurrying away." A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Madam Esi's eyes widened with fresh fury. "There. You see. I told you it was him. I did not do this." Kofi's voice cracked with desperation. "Jabari, why would you say such a thing? I was nowhere near her stall this morning. Are you calling me a liar, boy?" Jabari's voice hardened, his eyes narrowing with practiced offense. "I have no reason to lie. I have known Madam Esi for years. What reason would I have to fabricate such a story?" The crowd murmured in agreement. Jabari was respected, wealthy, well-spoken. Kofi was poor, quiet, easily dismissed. The scales of belief tipped hard against him, and Chief Kwesi's face grew troubled as he watched the crowd's mood shift toward judgment. "Based on this testimony," the chief said slowly, though clearly uneasy, "I must consider, wait." The single word cut through the tension like a blade. Every head turned. Amara stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, her walking stick tapping softly against the ground, her sightless eyes calm and steady despite the hundreds of stares now fixed upon her. "Chief Kwesi," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering, "the man who just spoke is lying." For a moment, the entire square fell into stunned, disbelieving silence. Then laughter broke out, scattered and mocking. "A blind girl claims to know the truth," someone scoffed. "How could she possibly know what happened? She cannot even see the man's face." Jabari smirked, folding his arms with theatrical confidence. "Chief, with respect, are we truly going to entertain the words of a girl who cannot see the sun, let alone the truth?" The crowd's laughter grew louder, sharper, crueler. Amara felt the weight of every mocking word pressing against her chest, but she did not step back. Her grandmother's warning echoed in her mind, people fear what they do not understand, but beside that fear stood something stronger, the memory of Kofi's trembling, desperate voice, and the certainty of what she had just sensed. "I do not need eyes to see truth, Chief Kwesi," Amara said steadily. "When that man spoke just now, I felt it again, the crimson light I have felt before, whenever someone knowingly lies. It surrounded him the entire time he spoke. Ridiculous, Jabari snapped, though something flickered behind his confidence mask, something like unease. This is nonsense. Chief, we cannot allow superstition to interfere with justice. Chief Kwesi studied Amara for a long, quiet moment. He had known her since she was a small child, had watched her navigate the world with a grace and perception that often left the sighted villagers speechless. He did not fully understand what she claimed to sense, but he had learned, over many years of leadership, never to dismiss a voice simply because it was unfamiliar or inconvenient. Can you prove what you are saying, child? He asked gently. Amara lowered her head slightly. I cannot prove it the way eyes can prove what they see, Chief. But I know what I feel is true. Truth does not need to shout to be real. And a lie cannot hide from someone who does not judge with eyes, but with something deeper. A tense murmur rippled through the crowd. Some villagers exchanged uncertain glances, doubt creeping into their previously unshaken convictions. Others remained skeptical, arms crossed, unwilling to trust the word of a blind girl over a respected merchant. Chief Kwesi raised his staff, silencing the murmurs once more. I will not rush this judgment. Kofi will remain here, under watch, but no punishment will be carried out today. I will question every witness again, separately, one at a time, until the truth reveals itself clearly. No more shouting. No more assumptions. Only truth. The crowd reluctantly dispersed, though whispers followed them like smoke, some sympathetic toward Kofi, others certain of his guilt, and a growing few unsettled by the strange, unshakable certainty in a blind girl's voice. That night, the village of Ikeno did not sleep peacefully. Kofi sat alone in a small holding room near the chief's compound, his knees pulled to his chest, his mind spinning with fear. Would anyone believe him? Would his entire life be destroyed because of words he never spoke and a crime he never committed? Across the village, Amara lay awake beside her grandmother, her heart heavy with worry. Grandmother, she whispered into the darkness, what if they don't believe me? What if my gift isn't enough to save him? Nola reached over and gently squeezed her granddaughter's hand. Then you will have done what truth demands of us all, child, you will have spoken it, even when it was difficult, even when others mocked you for it. That is more than most people ever do. But it might not be enough, Amara whispered. Sometimes, Nola said softly, truth needs time to reveal itself fully. Be patient. Watch. Listen. The universe rarely lets a lie stand forever. The following morning, Chief Kwesi began his careful questioning, calling witnesses one by one to a quiet corner of his compound, away from the noise and pressure of the crowd. He asked each person to recount, in careful detail, exactly what they had seen and heard the previous day. Most admitted, under calm and private questioning, that they had seen very little, only Kofi walking through the market square, nothing more. Their earlier certainty crumbled quickly once removed from the heat of public panic. Then it was Jabari's turn. Tell me again, Chief Kwesi said, his voice calm but pointed, exactly what you saw. I already told you, Chief. I saw Kofi near the store, glancing around nervously, and then, where exactly were you standing when you witnessed this? Jabari hesitated, just slightly. Near the cloth merchant's stall. That stall is nearly 40 paces from Madame ESI's table, obscured partly by two other stands. Are you certain you saw clearly from that distance? Yes, I have sharp eyes, Chief. Yesterday you said you saw him slip something beneath his cloak as he hurried away. Today, describe for me which direction he hurried toward. Jabari's eyes flickered, just briefly, toward the ground. Toward the eastern path, I believe. Yesterday, in front of the crowd, you said he ran toward the western well. Which is it, Jabari? A ripple of tense silence followed. Jabari's confident posture faltered, his jaw tightening. Perhaps I misspoke. It has been a stressful day for everyone, Chief. Small details can blur. Chief Kwesi's eyes narrowed slightly, though his voice remained calm. Small details, perhaps. But the direction a thief flees is not a small detail, Jabari. It is the very core of your testimony. Jabari said nothing further, his confidence visibly cracking beneath the weight of his own contradictions. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent, a young shepherd boy named Keto came running breathlessly into the village square, his sandals slapping against the dusty ground. Chief Kwesi, he shouted. I must speak with you. I saw something yesterday, near the river, but I was afraid to say anything. Chief Kwesi quickly gathered the key witnesses once more, along with a curious, murmuring crowd that had heard news of the shepherd's sudden arrival. Speak, child, the chief said. What did you see? Keto's chest heaved as he caught his breath. Yesterday afternoon, while I was bringing my goats down from the hills, I saw a man near the old grain barrels by the abandoned storage shed. He was alone. He looked around nervously, then pushed something into one of the barrels and quickly walked away. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I heard about the missing goat this morning, I remembered. Can you describe the man? Chief Kwesi asked. Keto hesitated, glancing nervously around the crowd before his eyes landed, unmistakably, on Jabari. It was him, Chief. I'm certain of it. He was wearing that same blue cloth wrapped around his shoulder. Gasps erupted through the crowd. All eyes turned toward Jabari, whose face had drained of color entirely. This is absurd. Jabari stammered, taking a step back. The boy is mistaken. Perhaps confused. I was nowhere near those barrels. Then you will not mind, Chief Kwesi said firmly, if we search that barrel immediately. A group of villagers rushed toward the abandoned storage shed, Chief Kwesi leading the way with brisk, determined steps. Kofi, still under watch but now surrounded by a crowd whose mood had visibly shifted, followed closely behind, his heart hammering with a fragile, desperate hope. At the shed, they found the old grain barrel exactly where Keto had described. Chief Kwesi reached inside, his hand disappearing into the dry, dusty grain, and then his fingers closed around something solid. He pulled out Madame ESI's leather pouch, heavy with the unmistakable weight and clink of gold coins. The crowd erupted into stunned exclamations. Madame ESI rushed forward, snatching the pouch and confirming, with trembling hands, that it was indeed hers, coins intact. There are footprints here as well, another villager called out, pointing toward fresh marks in the soft earth leading directly from the barrel toward the direction of Jabari's storage shed, less than 100 paces away. Every eye in the crowd turned toward Jabari once more. His carefully constructed composure shattered completely. I can explain, he stammered, backing away as the crowd closed in around him, their earlier suspicion now redirected entirely toward the man who had orchestrated it all. Explain then, Chief Kwesi said, his voice hard as stone. Explain to all of us, right now, exactly what happened. Jabari's shoulders sagged. The fight drained from his posture entirely. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I took it. I took Madame ESI's gold. I have debts, Chief, debts I could not repay, and shame I could not face. When the opportunity presented itself, I took the pouch and hid it, planning to retrieve it once the panic settled. And Kofi? Chief Kwesi demanded. Why accuse an innocent man? Jabari's eyes dropped to the ground, unable to meet the crowd's furious stares. Because it was easy, he admitted quietly. Because everyone already believed the poor man capable of theft before a single word was spoken. I knew no one would question it. I knew no one would defend him. A heavy, shamed silence settled over the crowd. Villagers exchanged guilty glances, the weight of Jabari's confession landing not just on him, but on every person who had shouted accusations without proof, who had judged Kofi's character based on nothing but the emptiness of his pockets. Madame ESI turned slowly toward Kofi, her earlier fury replaced entirely by remorse. Kofi. I am so sorry. I let my fear and my anger blind me to the truth. Can you forgive an old woman's foolish mistake? Kofi, tears finally breaking free after a day of held-back fear, nodded slowly. I understand, Madam ESI. Fear makes people believe things quickly. I only wish someone had asked me first, before condemning me. Chief Kwesi placed a firm hand on Kofi's shoulder. Let this be a lesson to all of Ikeno, he announced, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Suspicion is not proof. Wealth does not equal honesty, and poverty does not equal guilt. We nearly destroyed an innocent man's life today, not because of evidence, but because of assumption and prejudice dressed up as certainty. His gaze shifted toward Amara, who stood quietly beside her grandmother at the edge of the crowd. And let this also be a lesson, he continued, that sight is not only a matter of the eyes. Sometimes, the clearest vision belongs to those who see with something far deeper. Villagers turned toward Amara, their earlier mockery replaced now with something closer to awe and quieter person who had shouted accusations without proof. Some lowered their heads, ashamed of their laughter from the day before. Others approached her gently, offering quiet apologies. Jabari was made to return every coin he had spent from other past dealings under suspicion, and Chief Kwesi ordered him to work under community service for a full season, repairing the very market stalls his lies had thrown into chaos. In the weeks that followed, life in Ikeno slowly returned to its familiar rhythms, though something had shifted, quietly but permanently, beneath the surface. Villagers who once mocked Kofi's poverty now sought his craftsmanship, and with contributions from grateful neighbors, including Madam ESI herself, Kofi finally built a small workshop he had dreamed of for years, filled with proper tools and the steady, satisfying sound of honest work. Amara, too, found her place changed within the village. Children who once whispered cruel things now walked beside her, asking questions, listening closely to her stories, no longer seeing her blindness as a weakness, but wondering instead at the quiet strength it seemed to carry. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in warm shades of orange and gold, a young child sat beside Amara on the familiar wooden bench outside her home. Amara, the child asked softly, do you ever wish you could see like everyone else? Amara smiled gently, turning her face toward the warmth of the setting sun she could feel but never see. Everyone sees differently, she said. Some see with their eyes, and stop looking any further. Others learn to see with their hearts, their ears, their patience. What matters most is not how we see, but whether we choose to see the truth, even when it is difficult, even when others refuse to believe us. The child considered this quietly, then smiled and rested her head against Amara's shoulder as the last light of day faded gently over the peaceful village of Ikeno. Many people see with their eyes, but only a few see with truth. And when prejudice clouds the heart, even perfect vision becomes blindness. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away just yet. Smash that like button, subscribe to @African_mystery_stories so you never miss a story like this again, and drop a comment below telling us what you would have done if you were in Amara's place. Your support means everything to us. See you in the next story.